Thank you all. I'm incredibly excited to be here. I have had an interesting journey these last few years of stumbling my way through history, if you will. And I was just thrilled when I found OCTA and all of my new friends here. And I am thrilled today to be able to share with you all of our finds on our little section of the Cherokee Trail. So please join me as we look at artifacts across the Palmer Divide. On this cover photo, I do like to note, that is my horse Ladyhawk, and that is Point of the Rocks. I probably have 100 of these pictures, because it's just my favorite scene. Today, I'm going to be talking about the history of our property. It's quite extensive. And then all the survey that we've done in the few short years that we have lived there. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the documentation we've been doing, because I am an amateur, big A amateur. And I would love to crowdsource with all of you guys on appropriate documentation and how we can really bring this part of the Cherokee Trail to life through important documentation. And then finally, I'm going to get to all the artifacts, which is the reason you're here. And then we can have some questions and answers, and probably half the questions I can't answer, but maybe somebody else in this room can. So to begin, we have named our property for Fox Sake Farm. And it's a very old property. It's been 100 different things in its 120-year history. It was homesteaded in 1890, and the picture you're looking at here is actually the 1900s dairy barn. And it's very long and very skinny, made of cinder blocks. And when you go into the dairy barn, you can actually see the grooves in the floor where the cows used to stand. And it went into a place we affectionately call the dark barn. We just couldn't find the light switch the first month we lived there, so it was the dark barn. And then we found the light switch. And that goes into a holding pen. And when we first moved into the property, that was also the barn for my horses. They all had to crash together in the dark barn of the 1900s dairy barn. By the way, they thought it was fantastic. They loved it. The property has also been, besides a dairy farm, it had cattle for grazing. It also had sheep for wool, and at one point it was a potato farm. So you're going to see some images here where the potato fields used to be on LiDAR. And for those of you who toured our property yesterday, when you walked that mowed path up to the trail, you actually passed one of the old potato pickers on your right-hand side. It was that large, very heavy metal object, well rusted. When I first moved to our property 3 years ago, the people we bought the property from left me a copy of Lee Whitney's book and said, hey, just so you know, the Cherokee Trail runs through your property. And I was like, I'm sure it runs through our property like a mile away, you know, to the east, to the west, but not like through my property. And so my neighbor, Ed, to my south, the picture, we're gonna do this slide from right to left just to be confusing. He actually sent me this picture and he put arrows to where the Cherokee Trail is at. Like, here, idiot, this is the Cherokee Trail. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting, because when we first moved into the property, I was checking fence lines with my daughter on the four-wheeler, and it was getting dark, and we hit that Cherokee Trail. And we about got bucked off the four-wheeler, because my daughter was driving. And I was like, this is the worst ranch drainage ever? Who put this here? Why is this here? And as it turned out, again, we were looking at the fence lines, and so it was right in between our neighbor's property, and that's where the ruts were actually the deepest. So I had a few glasses of wine, like I'm prone to do on Friday nights, and I'm like, I'm gonna figure out if this Cherokee Trail is really on the property, or if that's just some old ranch road. So I start Googling around, and I stumble across OCTA. I'm like, wow, of all the people who would know about the Cherokee Trail, these folks have a Cherokee Trail chapter. They can tell me all about it. So I go to put an email together to reach out to OCTA and ask for information. And I had a passing thought of like, this is how I get serial killed, because I have to give them my address. I can't just say I have the trail and not actually tell them where I'm at. So if you hear Larry and I joke about getting serial killed, it's because that's how I would get serial killed. It wouldn't be in a white van in a parking lot. It would be like trying to find a history trail or something like that. So OCTA did not serial kill me. I'm here today, survivor. And what OCTA they looked at, they're like, yeah, the Cherokee Trail probably does run through your property, because they had all of the old land records at the section markers of where the trail crossed. And they're like, yeah, looks like it runs right through your property. You can see that red pin there is my place. And then also some wizards of LiDAR also sent me the image on the far left. And I absolutely love LiDAR because it does things beneath the surface, like just beneath the vegetation. And for those of you who were out in my place yesterday and said, where's the trail? I'm like, it's under this 3 feet of grass you see. And so if you look to the left, for those who were on the tour, that big square thing is my arena. That's where we were standing. The flat thing next to that, that's the pond. And then it runs right up the hill. And where it gets obliterated is actually one of the old potato fields on my neighbor's property. And so this LiDAR just gives really definitive evidence of where the trail ran and how deep some of those ruts actually were across the landscape. I'm like, yes, we actually have this information. This trail actually ran through our property. We have evidence of it. And then I went to go hunting at the General Land Office, which back in college, when I was doing my master's, I actually worked for Bureau of Land Management. I would frequently have to find original surveys and things. So I went back and I found the original survey of our property. And we are in section 18, and on the left-hand side is the original plat, and there's the square, and then on the right-hand side, you can see that's exactly where my property is. It's pretty much right where the trail runs. That's a grouping of trees that probably used to grow on our property. But our property also used to have logging on it too. So those trees probably got logged not too long after it was homesteaded. And if you follow the trail from the bottom up, it crosses there, right where the trail crosses that red line in section 18, that's right about where my house is. And then going up, you can see Point of the Rocks at the very top of this image. And the trail did split. The main trail took a left and went to the left of Point of the Rocks as you're facing them. And then the other trail branched off to the right or to the east and went on over to Elbert. So here we have our original survey from the General Land Office. So after I found the original survey, I also found my original homestead certificate. This is it. It's in immaculate condition. Fortunately, it came out of the Pueblo office and not the Denver office, because whoever was in Pueblo had beautiful handwriting and I can read all of it. So here you can see my homesteaders are Wilston and Ellen Plum, and they homesteaded February 6th, 1890, which is when the trail also kind of officially closed as well. So I was like, that's interesting. I wonder if the Plums are still in the area. So I went back and I was hoping Nancy Prince could talk about this because I know she's done some research on the Plums. But I was looking around and yep, Wilston was in the military, so he very well could have found the property in his military days. And all of their kids were grown. And they moved out to Colorado and homesteaded this place with their semi-adult children. Well, all of their children mostly stayed in the area. I think one went to California, but the other 3 stayed in the area. One married in Evans, and I live by Evans Road, and the other one married in McCoon, which I live by McCoon Road too. I was like, well, that's really interesting. And so I kept digging to see if I could find out more, and I'm gonna take a side quest tour just a minute here. I work for Colorado Springs Utilities. I work in downtown Colorado Springs at Leon Young Service Center, and when I can't take my office anymore, I go scurry up this kind of rugged little hill to Evergreen Cemetery. And that's where I spend my lunch breaks, is walking around and just checking out all the gravestones because they're so pretty. Well, anyways, I went and decided I was going to do Find a Grave. And so I found Ellen and Wilson Plum's grave in Evergreen Cemetery, and I've walked by it 100 times on my lunch break. So here's where I work, that little hill I scurry up, and that star is where Ellen and Wilson Plum currently rest. And that is actually their gravestone. So when I have a bad day at work, I take a walk up the hill and I see my homesteaders and I tell them all about it. So surveying the trail. This trail was surveyed a little bit differently. To begin with, we started with OCTA surveying, and then we did, the unearthing history part is we did metal detecting as well. We have some really cool mapping features, and then the documentation, which is where I'm going to crowdsource for you all. So to begin with, we did a traditional OCTA surveying crew. The picture at the top is actually of everyone standing in an old foundation by the creek, which we believe to be a sawmill, but that's kind of disputed. And then this other picture is standing, there's actually a lot of people in this picture, they're just kind of hard to see. There's a group of people on the right, and then on the left you can see a white Jeep and another group of people. And I took this picture looking towards our house at my arena when everybody was surveying the the Cherokee Trail. And it is an intact trail. It hasn't been disturbed or obliterated, at least on my property. And it goes pretty halfway into my neighbor's property before it's obliterated. And then actually my neighbor to the north, we surveyed theirs a few months later and was able to find evidence of the trails there. Unfortunately, after that property to Point of the Rocks, there's hayfields, and the trail is really, really difficult to see there. But we did do the traditional OCTA surveying there. And Ethan also came out, and he did it too. And then on top of the OCTA surveying, so first we know where the Cherokee Trail is, we documented the ruts and did everything like that, and then we did metal detecting as well. And this was incredibly interesting. I thought we'd survey the whole thing, and we would find 5 objects, and 4 of them would be nails. That was not the case. We found so much more. So on the left side, your left, yes, is my little niece and a metal detectorist. And those metal detectorists were great because they took my little nieces around and helped them find and dig things. And she found a tack buckle that came off a harness, and that's what she's holding up there. And then on the right, you can see more metal detectorists. And I had a better picture, just hard to see because the flags were blue and not orange. But every single artifact that was found was left on the ground to be documented and then had a flag stuck in it so it could be mapped. And so the whole trail from top to bottom had all these flags just running along it, and you could see a really interesting, connection and correlation of what objects were found where. Which leads me to my next part, which is the mappins part. And I know you saw a lot of maps today, and they all covered hundreds of miles. This whopper covers about a quarter of a mile. So if you look to the left-hand side, we use Gaia, and this is what our property looks like. It's my property and my neighbors to the north as well. And then if you zoom in a little bit, you see on the next image over, you can see kind of the collection of artifacts and how they're distributed. And that little road in the middle, that's my neighbor's driveway. So we did our property, came back a few months later. Of course, the road had obliterated the trail, and then we found more artifacts going across. There was a little creek and a slough there. And then if you zoom in even more, you can see the detail and my indexing numbers of all of the artifacts that we found. And if you click on, say, FFSF4, which is for Fox Lake Farm 44, you will get a picture like this. And it gives the coordinates as well as the elevation as well. And I took a picture of the artifact on the ground as it came out of the ground. The next part was documenting this. We pulled so many artifacts out. It was overwhelming to note and document everything. So what I did is I had all the Gaia pictures in the field taking pictures of all these artifacts. Then I went into my shop, and because I didn't take pictures with the tape measure in the field, I got to do it again on my workbench with a tape measure. So then I took pictures of all the objects again with a tape measure for scale. And then I also have an Excel file of the artifacts, because we found other artifacts besides just what was related to the Cherokee Trail. So I documented every single thing that we had. And I would do the lat longs, the elevation, and when we collected it, because we did a couple surveys, and then what the object was and any interesting information I've learned about the object as I've gone along. There was times that I thought I knew what an object was, and I did not. And so it's been really helpful to go back and update this. And I feel this is like a crowdsourced effort. And I did bring it's on my computer, but I did bring my photo guide and my decoder ring Excel spreadsheet. If anybody wants to take a look at these photos and take a stab at dates or what they might be, some of these objects are obvious, and some of them still don't exactly know what they go to. So now to talk about artifacts. I know I just told you a whole bunch of stories about what I do on my lunch break, and this crazy lady is finally going to show us artifacts. I am not going to show you every artifact because there was 109 of them. So I just have the highlight reel right here, and again, after this, if anybody wants to come up, and if we want to look at some of our other photos and artifacts and things like that, happy to show that to you. And those who were on the tour yesterday, you probably remember there was quite a bit of stuff out there. So the most interesting to me, and one of my favorite, is these banjo tuning pegs. This was found towards the south end of the trail, kind of towards my neighbor's property, and they were found about 3 or 4 feet apart from each other. And the reason I love these banjo tuning pegs so much is because this was just a purely entertainment item. Like everything else had function, and you had to carry everything, and it was heavy, and it's hot, and it snows. But a banjo is just for fun. That's just for keeping spirits up. So this is actually one of my favorite objects right here is the banjo tuning pegs. My next favorite thing is horses. And we found 4 different horseshoes on the property. 3 of them were broken, 1 of them was whole. The whole one is what I showed on the agenda, that perfectly round whole shoe. This one is actually a little more interesting to me, is because when horses, this is on a front shoe of a horse, when horses wear through their shoes, they wear down the toe first and they break them. And this horse wore his shoes clean out, and these were broken in half and also found about 2 feet apart from each other. So on that mapping part that I was showing you, that's why it was so important to really map like where these artifacts were found in relationship to each other. So this is a broken horseshoe here. It was very well worn. This object is a bullet that has been fired. And I don't know how these metal detectors do it. This thing is the size of a nickel. But here we have a bullet that has been fired, and it was found right on the middle of the trail. I don't know if it was after a person or a badger or a deer, but it certainly had been fired. This is the clasp off the back of a waistcoat of a jacket. And the jacket would go through, and it just has these little forks that just hold the silk in place. And this is also a period piece. And it has Paris on one side, and then it has a greyhound on another. And I'm fond of this because when I do a lot of horseback riding, the costume and the uniform we wear, I actually have to wear a waistcoat for some of my competitions. And I have a clasp on the back of my waistcoat. This technology hasn't changed in a few hundred years. It looks the same. What these folks found is just incredible. This is from the Eagle Pencil Company, and it's a holder for lead when you go to draw or make notes or anything. They didn't have pencils like with wood with a lead in the center like we had today. This was literally a holder to hold a rod of lead while they sketched or took notes or anything else like that. So I'd like to think that maybe this lead helped support some of the images and some of the pencil drawings you've seen here at this conference. I hope that actually drew one of those pictures. This is another kind of fun one, just kind of an interesting item. This is a button, likely off underwear, likely off long underwear. It's very light, it's very thin, and it was found not too far from where the waistcoat buckle was found. This sucker, it's probably for killing vampires, but it could be a railroad spike too. Probably a railroad spike. This was an incredible hunk of metal. It's hand forged. It probably weighs close to 2 pounds or something like that, and just incredible heavy duty spike. This, I was just actually told yesterday, again, when you crowdsource these things, you learn interesting stuff. This is the lid of a can. And there was one area of our property that my nieces actually, they dubbed it the picnic ground, because at the picnic ground, we found tons of cans, crushed cans, lead solder, scrap metal, and things like that. And it's a nice big flat area that overlooks the creek, and it would be a very nice place to sit and have your lunch or wait a storm out or something like that. And I heard yesterday that this was actually, out of all the cans that were found, that this is probably one of the oldest ones. This interesting thing, I thought it came off a carriage, but Googling around and talking to some other folks, this is made of brass, and this is for a gas light fixture in a house. Brass is malleable, and you can bend it and put it through walls and things like that. So this piece, there was another brass piece found not too far off of it that went with it. So this was brass, and you can see the zoom up picture. That's where the adjuster would have been to make the light, more gas to come through and brighter light and so forth. And this, I'm ending with this one because this is most people's favorite. This was found almost at the fence line between me and my southern neighbor. And this is an actual tin cup. And it's cracked, came out of the ground exactly as you see it. It had a crack in the side. And you can see on the other picture in the middle here where the rivet holds the two tin pieces together. So this is always a favorite, is people are always happy to see this tin can. Tin cup. And believe me, I have a story about what this tin cup held. A party with a banjo that ended with a bullet fight, and somebody lost a waistcoat thing and a button. So it's kind of a crazy story in my head. Then we found a lot of artifacts, a lot of pieces of just metal. Some were identifiable, some were not. Tons of pieces of wagons, like just things bouncing and coming off wagons. So all of that was documented the same way. This is just a snippet, because we'd be here all day if I went through every single one of them. But again, same thing, I took a picture of the image and then I laid it out with a tape measure, and you can see this is just a sampling of like the pieces of metal and that came off the property. And then this is pretty much all of the nails we found. All these nails were pre-industry, they're square, they were all hand forged and things like that. A lot of nails. This poor one metal detectorist, people are pulling out banjo things and tin cups, and this one poor guy, he found the trail of nails. He found nothing but nails. I haven't seen him since. I feel bad. As I said, this is a very old property. I have artifacts from like literally every single decade, starting in like the 1850s. Well, actually before then, we have some earlier than that. There's an artifact for dang near every decade. This one is one of my favorite. This is actually a concho that goes on a Western saddle. And you've probably seen it if you look at Western saddles, there's a concho and then those two holes, two leather strips would come out of that. And you could tie things to your saddle. You could tie your slicker or something, or your rope or whatever else to your saddle. And that's what this came off of. It is probably not period, but it has a silver foil on it and almost a gaudy kind of floral pattern to it. So the front is the picture in the middle, and you can see that kind of silver gaudy pattern. And then the back is kind of tarnished. But this was something neat, because this came off of a show saddle. And this was found really close to the trail, not perfectly on it, and it's likely a little bit later. But along the trail, we have found an artifact in almost every single decade. And then going back even further, it used to be called Arrowhead Ranch. It was actually a trading post area with Native Americans and fur trappers and traders and everything else like that. So to date, we have found three Native American artifacts on the trail. Here's an example of one. One's larger, and then the other two are smaller like this, that were either for scraping or carving or something else of that nature. So yeah, we have some really old artifacts on this property. So our survey summary and artifact fun facts. We found 109 artifacts. 86 were confirmed to be from the Cherokee Trail period. 19 could be from the trail, but we don't really know. And then 4 artifacts are not related to the trail, but they're either Native American or later, like that concho that I just showed. And my back of the envelope, really bad math, approximately every 100 wagons going up the trail lost an artifact on our property. So that is my presentation. I will be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.